Good evening and welcome to Save Your Sanity podcast, or whatever time of day it is for you right now. I'm so glad you're here. I'm Dr. Rhoberta Shaler. And tonight we're going to be talking about something that can really help you observe some behaviors that you may have or you're observing in a friend or family member that will allow you to see why they keep attracting hijackals, those difficult people that I give the title hijackals to. And the definition of hijackals are people who hijack relationships for their own needs and purposes while relentlessly scavenging the relationship for power, for status, and for control. So, we're going to talk about 18 reasons why emotional abusers prefer people pleasers. And people pleasing is such a prevalent word that we use these days, but do we really understand what it means? And I wanted to really debrief that with you because people pleasers give other people the power to veto or reject them. And what could be more attractive to a hijackal than a person who will give the hijackal the power to veto and reject them? Wow. Now, that's not even on my list of 18 reasons. So think about that. A people pleaser, according to Merriam-Webster Dictionary, is a person who has an emotional need to please others, often at the expense of their own needs and desires. So they have this need to please, this desire to please, and they often confuse people pleasing with being kind. And please don't confuse those two. You can be kind and not a people pleaser, because a people pleaser has very, very porous boundaries, if they have any boundaries at all. And that lack of boundaries is what causes them to feel resentment, to feel taken advantage over. But then, because of their own upbringing and training, when they feel that someone else is taking advantage of them or they feel resentful, then they beat themselves up and say, I shouldn't feel resentful. That's not what a good person does. What's wrong with me? And they don't look outward at the relationship to see how they may be being used and abused. So, really important items to listen to today. Not only are there 18 reasons why emotional abusers prefer people pleasers, but the equivalent of that will be what you will hear: 18 possible ways that you can heal your life so that you won't be attracted or keep on being with a hijackal. So, from both sides of the equation, this is very important things. And people pleasers, they just hope to get approval and appreciation and validation from other people. And then they pretend they don't want it. It's all very, very confusing because they have a distorted idea of what it means to be nice and what it means to be kind. And they don't have a balance between concern for themselves and concern for others, compassion for themselves and compassion for others, a balance between their needs and other people's needs and desires and wants. So, very important pieces. And just things that the hijackal is going, wow, that's perfect. You're pre-groomed to allow me to be emotionally abusive. So if you are new to the podcast, you are welcome to support the podcast by going to patreon.com/saveyoursanity. You can make a one-time donation or a small monthly donation, and that helps to defray the cost of bringing this to you every week. Also, if you want to learn more about my work, you can go to forrelationshiphelp.com and you will find me there. For relationshiphelp.com. And if you've missed broadcasts of Save Your Sanity Help for Toxic Relationships, you can go to saveyoursanitypodcast.com and find them all there or wherever you like to get your podcast downloads. So let's jump in now and look at these 18 ways that a people pleaser becomes a hijackal's dream and eventually the people pleaser's nightmare. So the first one is that people pleasers tend to have low or shaky self-esteem. So they're not feeling all that terrific about themselves. They're certainly not going to be putting themselves out as confident or as assertive as would be healthier. So that may be just an underlying theme that sometimes your self-esteem is shaky. And then the second way would be that you have impaired self-esteem. So someone has dragged you down or put you down, maybe a hijackal parent who has then given you the wrong idea of who you are, and you've accepted that. And I hope every single one of us does not accept that other people know best. You know, if you ever meet someone who says, I know you better than you know yourself, see that as a great big red flag, okay? Because think about it. If someone thinks they know you better than you know yourself, either you need to be knowing yourself a lot better, or else they're gaslighting you. And that's one of the hallmarks of hijackals. So you want to notice that one. So if you have a lower shaky self-esteem, or if you had impaired self-esteem because someone described you to yourself in ways that made them happy but was not true about you. And when we're children, that happens a lot. And I've talked about that many, many times. And if you find that you are thinking, "Oh, I wish I could talk to her about it," you can. If you haven't spoken to me before, you're welcome to use my one-time new client opportunity of an hour's consultation with me for only $97. Just go to beaclient.com. Beaclient.com. Okay, so let's get on with these more reasons. So number 3, a hijackal really loves the fact that a people pleaser wants to be liked and needs to be liked. Darren, you're just a prize candidate for love bombing, right? Because you get love bombed. You can't believe your luck. This person adores you. This person hears you. They see you. They will do for you. They will give to you. They will recognize. They will be so wonderful. And so you just perk up and think, this is perfect. And so they've got your number right then and there, because if you really want and need to be liked, a hijacker will give that to you in the beginning, just enough to hook you. Or as I say in my book, Escaping the Hijackal Trap, there's a whole chapter called The Gotcha Factor. And that's exactly what's happening there. So you want to be needed and liked, and they want to scoop you up so they can be their abusive selves. And we need to recognize that, and don't be afraid to call it abuse. That's what it is, right? Get that. Emotional abuse, always remember what it is. It is controlling another person by criticizing, embarrassing, shaming, blaming, discounting, dismissing, depriving, or denying their rights, needs, wants, thoughts, feelings, and equality. That is abuse. That is emotional abuse. That's my definition. And it's really important to be able to say, I am being emotionally abused. Recognize it. Don't pretend. Don't make excuses. Don't rationalize. Don't justify. See it and know it and be able to name it. So important, because that's a big step to your healing, to be able to actually say, yes, I am being emotionally abused, and I know it, I recognize it, and I don't like it a bit. And that will be the beginning of your healing journey. So number 4, what do people pleasers do? They're not good at standing up for themselves. They will let people roll over them because they don't want to tell the person they're wrong, because they want the person to like them. So they will not speak up when they're hurt. They will not speak up when they're put down. And they will not stand up for themselves when they feel they're being bulldozed or rolled over. So a hijackal says, oh, great, there's no resistance here. I can just push on through. I can push that person over. I can play with their emotions, because they're not going to take a stand. They're not going to stop and say, no, they're not going to have that. So another way that that shows up is that people pleasers are conflict adverse and conflict avoidant. So instead of speaking up, or instead of saying, no, that doesn't work for me, or no, I'd prefer something else, they go, well, if that's what you really want. And they think they're being kind. They think they're being compromising. But there are fine lines between those things. And it's really important to understand where those fine lines meet and don't meet, and where you're in dangerous territory. Okay, so we've got 4 things already, 4 reasons hijackals prefer people pleasers. And you can hear the flip side of them already, because you need to shore up your self-esteem. You need to fix any impairment to your self-esteem. You of course want to be liked, but you don't need to be liked. That is not what has to happen here. So if you feel this great need that I will pay a high price because I need to be liked, your price may be way too high and you're not getting any good return on your investment. And then number 4 was you were maybe conflict avoidant or conflict adverse, and so you don't speak up for yourself. And we need to fix those things. So number 5 is you're not good at being assertive. Now, I make a difference between standing up for yourself, which means, no, you can't speak to me that way, or no, I won't accept that. But being assertive means to know that you have the right, and you accord yourself the right to say what you think, feel, need, want, prefer, and remember at any time, with my caveat, as long as you do not mention another human by name or pronoun. You have the right to say what's going on within you and use my personal weather report technique. That's the safest way, the most solid way to learn to communicate. And if you haven't heard about my personal weather report, it's in my book, Kaizen for Couples. Also, if you go to my YouTube channel, same as my website, for relationship help, FOR relationship HELP. So youtube.com/for relationship help, and just do a search on personal weather report and you will find a couple of videos I've done on it. So we want to get better at being assertive so that hijackals won't think we're going to lay down and play dead every time to please them. That makes them very happy, but then they 2 seconds later are making you wrong for being weak. Have you noticed? You cannot win. It's always the flip. If you do it one way, you're wrong. If you do it the other way, you're wrong. You cannot win, because hijackals always have to win. That's their game. So they will flip all the time. So number 6 is people pleasers are quick to apologize, even though they may not have done anything that requires an apology. But they'll apologize. Maybe in some cases, people pleasers are actually apologizing for taking breath and taking up space, because they just feel that, oh, I shouldn't have anything to say. I shouldn't get in the way of anything. And that may be a product of your upbringing. But the good news is that any of these things that I'm talking about, you can change. You can change the hijackal, but you can change things about yourself. And all of these things I'm talking about today are things that you may need to have someone help you. And as I said, I'm always happy to be that person. Go to beaclient.com. So we've got this quick to apologize. I don't want to be wrong. I don't want to be in their bad books. I don't want to rock the boat kind of thing. So you apologize for things you didn't do. You apologize for things that weren't your fault. And hijackals love that. They love to have you apologizing for things you didn't do, because it gives them power. So number 7 is you go along with what other people want, even when it's not what you want. And you think it's keeping the peace or not rocking the boat, but it's eroding yourself all the time. Oh, well, I never get to do what I want, but that's very selfish of me to want to do what I want. So I should be all right with that. And there must be something wrong with me because I'm not all right with that. And then there you are beating yourself up. And that's inappropriate, Because if you had a healthy balance between the other person and yourself, you would feel that that relationship was in balance, that you were both being able to speak up and talk about what you wanted and what you would like to do or where you would like to go equally with the other person. And that's really important. So we could get into a situation where we're constantly going along with other people and what they want and being really miserable while trying to put a smile on our face. That makes you very attractive to a hijackal, but it really hurts your soul. So don't do it. Okay? I know I make that sound so simple, but get some help so that you won't fall into that trap. Number 8 is people pleasers are unclear about how they feel. So that's one of the reasons they find it difficult to speak up, because they don't think about how they feel. And when they do think about how they feel, they think they shouldn't feel that way because it's not a good feeling. And so that's very appealing to hijackals, because then they'll tell you how to feel. They'll tell you how you do feel. They will gaslight you and project onto you. And that's attractive to them. But when you start standing up and saying, no, I actually know what I think and want. I actually know how I feel. And what you're describing is not how I feel. So if you'd like to know how I feel, you're welcome to ask. But that is not how I feel. When you get to that place, you are now becoming assertive, and that's really important. So number 9 is that people pleasers tend to become overgivers, and so they don't recognize it. They're just giving and giving and giving and giving and giving till they have nothing left to give, and they don't recognize it, but they resent it. But what could be better if you're a hijackal? Give everything to me. I don't care how tired you are. I don't care if you have no money. I don't care if you have no car. I don't care about anything as long as I do and I have the adoration. Or if I don't have your adoration, at least you're afraid of me. Oh, that's awful, isn't it? But it's absolutely accurate. That's how hijackals are. So it may be a mild case that they're putting out there, maybe a very severe, abusive, ugly, horrible case. So if you're an overgiver, you may think that overgiving makes you nice. You know, people like you if you give them everything, even more than you have. They will like you, and you do it maybe in the name of compassion. Oh well, I have it, so I can give it, and then you don't have it. And when you're ill, do the people that you gave everything to, do they come along and say, "Oh, let me fill your bucket. Let me fill you all back up for all the things you gave to me"? Not a chance if they're a hijackal. They're saying, "I don't care if you're sick. I need my breakfast. I don't care if you're sick. Go to work." They don't care. So if you get into a place where you are overgiving and you think it's being nice and it's being kind, and it's something that you do frequently. Of course, we all do those things occasionally because they make sense. But if we do it as a way of being in the world, we fall prey to just painting a big red sign on us saying, "Pick me," to a hijackal, because you're pre groomed. You're preconditioned to put up with their abuse. And yes, we're going to call it abuse because that's what it is. And number 10 is you're always busy taking care of other people. People pleasers are always busy, 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 and it's getting ready to, or taking care of, or moving from one place to the other to make a contribution. And that sounds very noble, but actually it's very unhealthy. We always want to have a balance between compassion for others and compassion for ourselves. And remember, self-care is not selfish. Self-care is not selfish. And if you have those things a little bit out of balance or confused, I hope you're clear now, because you can't give a gift you don't have. And if you're tired or put down or worn out or sad or overworked or confused from all of the things that have been happening, you don't have gifts of love to give. And if you try, you will damage yourselves. So people pleasers then make perfect partners for hijackals, don't they? Because the hijackal doesn't care about your well-being. They only care about their own. So if you're busy, busy, busy taking care of them, they will say, well, why don't you do more? And when you get tired or you get ill, they still want to be taken care of. I had some horrible examples of that when working with my clients. I had one client who had a very bad case of COVID, and her husband said, if you want to go to the hospital, drive yourself. I'm too busy. That kind of thing happens, and we really need to recognize it. Don't make excuses for the hijackal. Recognize what they are doing and call it what it is. It's abuse. And so it's important to see these 18 things. Absolutely. So number 11 is what I already said. I didn't realize I hadn't given you the number, that self-care is not selfish. It's what you do so that you can give the gifts you want to give and you have them to give. You're not tired. You're not worn out. You're not worn down. You have recovered. You have taken care of yourself. You're in balance. So number 12 is that you feel taken advantage of, but you think it's not nice to think you've been taken advantage of. That's clear about people pleasers. They feel like they're being taken advantage of, but as soon as that thought comes in their mind, they're already starting on themselves. Oh, that's not nice. I shouldn't think that. No, that's your body telling you things are out of balance here. And you may have been told that a person who just gives and gives and gives is a better person. If I could abolish one saying in the world, there are two or three I'd like to, but one for sure is, I don't know whoever brought this up, but I think it was in the 40s or 50s. Somebody made this up and made it sound spiritual. And that phrase is give until it hurts. Have you ever thought about that phrase? Should it be hurting you to give? Is there not something totally out of balance with that? And yet somehow we think that that's some wonderful maxim. No, I disagree. And so watch when those things are happening, because if you're taken advantage of and you feel it and you don't think it's nice to say no to that, then you are actually not being kind to that other person. And here's why I say that. I don't believe it's loving to allow another person to be unloving to you. I know that takes a bit of thinking about, but I really don't think it's loving to allow other people to be unloving toward you. You need to have boundaries and speak up and step up and walk away if you need to. But a hijackal loves a people pleaser who will swallow their own concern that they're being taken advantage of and just, take on all of the abuse, all of the nasty things that are said, all the demands that are made on them because they want the hijackal to like them. Marriage made in heaven between hijackals and emotional abusers, which same thing, and people pleasers. So number 13, you feel resentment, but you think you're terrible for feeling resentment. That's how people pleasers are. They're so conditioned to want and need the approval and validation and appreciation of others. Even though they'll say no, if they hear a thank you, they say, oh, it was nothing. But deep down, they know that there's an imbalance and they want something for themselves and they deserve something for themselves. So number 13 is people pleasers feel resentful, but then they think it's terrible that they feel that way. No, resentment is a sign that you're out of balance. The relationship is out of balance. So notice that for sure and be very, very clear. Now, number 14 is that people pleasers often feel invisible. They feel used and abused, and yet they think, oh, well, I didn't do enough. And they can feel quite invisible. You'll do for somebody, and they will won't even say thank you. They'll just expect you to do for them. And you're waiting patiently for at least some morsel of appreciation. You're not going to get that from a hijackal, except when they really want something from you that they think you won't give them. So if you find that you feel invisible, that people are not really noticing you or remembering you or taking you into account, that people-pleasing nature will cause a hijackal to say, "Oh, that's wonderful. I will not have to bother with them. They won't expect anything from me, and they'll just be happy to have me in their life." That's bad, right? Truly is bad. So let's look at number 15. Big issue here. You know, episode 115, such a big one. The 3 must-haves of healthy adult relationships. Well, people pleasers do not ask for equality, reciprocity, and mutuality in their relationships. They don't balance it out. They don't have boundaries to balance it out. And they do not insist that things be equal, reciprocal, and mutual. Or if they don't feel like insisting, they don't observe that things are not equal, reciprocal, and mutual, and therefore make a decision to go elsewhere to look for something healthier because they're in that mode of really wanting to please that person. And that's one of the reasons that people who leave hijackals go back, is because they're still trying to please that person. And they're looking for that elusive validation from just that person. It's very complex, as you know. And we need to see these very fundamental pieces that if we have been trained to be a people pleaser and we've been told that that will make us a quote unquote good person, you can see the downfalls of it in this broadcast. It's not going to work for you. It will never work for you with hijackals or not with hijackals, because it will never have equality, reciprocity, and mutuality. So if you haven't listened to episode 115 before, I highly recommend that you do. Now, number 16 is people pleasers are stressed and anxious and burned out, so they give in more easily. Well, from all the 15 things I've already mentioned, of course you're going to be stressed and anxious and burned out, perhaps. And then they're going to ask for more and more and more, and you're going to feel more stressed, more anxious, and more burned out. But the hijackal knows that that's your nature, that you will do that. And then they will push it until you're so emotionally and physically exhausted that you have nothing left. And at that moment, get help, okay? Get help. If you want to talk to me, I'm happy to help. Go to beaclient.com. That will help you immensely. Even if you only use the 1 hour and don't continue to work with me, it will help. So know that you can reach out and do that. Now, number 17 reasons that emotional abusers are drawn to people pleasers is that other people tell you you're overgiving and being abused, and you turn around and make excuses for the hijackal. Oh, they're tired. Oh, they're stressed. Oh, they had a bad childhood. Well, they promised they're going to stop drinking. They used all our money, but it was an outlet for them. Those are all justifications. Those are rationalizations for poor treatment, which equals abuse. But if you've gotten into that habit in your mind, if you've gotten into that mindset, as they say, if you just have a mental habit of saying, oh, well, it's okay, it's only me. Well, then do it for your children. Stand up in your back legs, because you're demonstrating to your children who are observing you in a hijackal relationship that you're overgiving and over forgiving. And then you're being abused, and you're demonstrating and modeling that for your children. So if you won't take heart and heed to that, what I said, do it on behalf of your children. Do not give them the model that you are going to overgive, overextend, and allow yourself to be abused. You don't want them to do it because you're not feeling good about it. So let's not teach them to do it too. See how important all these things are? And you may not have thought about them in this way, which is what was so important about this episode. And the last one, the last reason why emotional abusers prefer somebody who's a people pleaser is that they don't know what healthy love is. People pleasers do not know what healthy love is, or what it feels like, or what it looks like, or what it sounds like. So they won't be expecting healthy love, says the hijackal. So great. Got a live one here. They don't know what healthy love is. Neither does the hijackal by any stretch of the imagination, but they can see that they have a way to have power over you, to use and abuse you. And so these 18 reasons why emotional abusers prefer people pleasers are also 18 ways you can heal so that you will stop attracting or staying with a hijackal. So I hope that they have really been things that you can chew on, that you will think about them a lot. Go back and listen to this episode again and write them out. Am I doing this? Where did I learn to do this? What would I need to do to change this about myself so I will stop being attractive to hijackals, those people who want to use and abuse you, step over you, and exhaust you. So very, very important. So you know where to find me, forrelationshiphelp.com. Same name as my YouTube channel. Go on over there and subscribe and hit the notification button. You will then know when I am doing a new video. And until we meet again, this is so very elemental and fundamental. Know that you deserve to be treated well, and treat yourself well, because self-care is not selfish. So take very good care of yourself, because you're precious and you matter. Talk soon. Good evening, everyone, and I'm glad you're here. Got lots of comments here. And remember, I'll just remind everybody at the beginning, if you have a question or you have a comment, put it in now, because when there haven't been any new ones for 30 seconds, and I've answered all the ones that are there, I disappear. So I don't want you to be left with a question that you wish you'd asked. So do that. Let's see what we have here. Michelle, people pleasing is not on my to-do list anymore. Yay! Great news. That's very important. And welcome all the way from Europe. That's great. Walker Hound Gal says hello. All right. John says people pleasers are kind people without identity. Well, that's one way that you could look at it, because their identity is to be chameleons and be whoever another person wants them to be. So we can certainly look at that. Good evening, Share Bear. I don't know what that means, Phaedra. Okay, here's a question. Walker Hound Gal says, is people pleasing the same as codependency? Well, it certainly is a form of codependency, and people pleasers are generally codependent. And it's an important distinction. It's an important question to ask, because you want to know what codependence is. And, you know, I've taken care to write my own definitions for all these things. So I'll just read you my definition for codependence and you see if it fits. Codependence is planning your life around pleasing another. It's excessive emotional reliance on a partner. And if you're in a codependent relationship, it's one where one partner needs the other, who in turn needs to be needed. So yes, of course, people pleasers are codependent on other people to give them approval, appreciation, and validation. So yes, yes, yes. John says some people pleasers are that way just in public. They're always saying sorry. There is a thin line between people pleasing and hijackals. Well, there can be, but there's a very, very far distance between people pleasing and hijackals. in the nature of the humans, because the hijackals are the ones who will put on a show in public, not the people pleasers. So it's important to see that. Walker Hound guy, girl, gal. Second question. I'm leaving my hijackal. He's been triangulating our growing kids with awful, awful things. Should I just look away and let it go, even if he is lying about me? Well, that's a heavy question. I'll say a few things about it because it's important. I hope your children know who you are. I hope they know the truth. I hope they're able to see the truth. But you can't convince them of the truth if the hijackal has turned them against you. So just carry on being you. Carry on saying, "Oh, well, actually, what was said about me is not the truth. I would be happy to tell you what the truth is if you're interested in asking." Don't force the truth on them, because they need to ask you. They need to be in a space that demonstrates their willingness to hear the answer. So I always recommend that when somebody says, well, in this case, Dad said this, and you say, actually, that's not the way it happened from my point of view, I'd be happy to share that with you if you just ask, and don't force it on them, because that allows them to make decisions, to become curious, rather than feel that they have to defend Dad. And then that only entrenches them more. Then they'll go back and say, well, she said that it's not true. And then he'll, and she and he and she, and it will just be weighty. So it's probably best to just say, not how I remember it, but I'm happy to share if you ask me. Not how I was feeling, not the way um, that it actually happened. Just use the personal weather report and use it masterfully, and then you will be able to speak up without putting down. And that's really important skill to have, and that's what the personal weather report gives you. And so it's a very important technique to master. So I hope you will. Hi, Sky. All right. Number 3. Oh, what was number 3? You want to be liked. Okay. Um, Definitely conditioned to need to be liked. My mother handed out quote unquote love and approval as a penny pincher. It's so automatic now. Yeah, that's what I was saying, that, we're raised to be people pleasers by people who need us to please them. And then we become attractive to hijackals as a result of that. So that's an example. Alice, hello. I haven't seen you post before. Today I found you live. I think I'm live. And that's a good thing. Cape Town, South Africa. It's 5 a.m. Yes. Well, welcome, welcome, welcome. My father was actually born in Bredasdorp, so I have an affinity for Cape Town, although I haven't ever been there. So welcome. Hi, Annie. Nice to see you here. John says, hijackals are the ones that know my exterior reality better than me. Well, they think they do. As I was a kind person, they gaslit me into believing I'm a people pleaser, codependent. Well, that's their job. That's what they do. That's what they specialize in. So you're absolutely right, John. And Sky says about number 4, you're not good at standing up for yourself. The word no was forbidden me to use. I am a shoo-in for the hijackal. Yes, that's true. If that's the way that you were raised, you certainly would be beckoning them. It's easy over here. They would love that. Steve, hi. My soon to be ex made a very serious, misleading claim to make my youngest daughter, and told her that he was being inappropriate and to let me know if he makes you feel uncomfortable. She also added in the divorce papers that I couldn't lay by them in their beds anymore, to insinuate that I'm being inappropriate. Absolutely mind-blowing, and zero accountability, none. Like it didn't even happen. She blames the lawyers. Well, that's pretty typical of hijackals, sadly enough, Steve. They are very misleading. They also engage in something that is hard to pinpoint in the beginning, but I hope you've become very good at, and probably have if you have a soon to be ex. And that is that they are masters of the plausible lie. There's just enough truth in it that you don't really feel you can jump on it and make it wrong, and yet you know that it's not right. And they're very good doing that in court. They're very good at doing that with their attorneys. And so, yes, but as you say, it's not inappropriate. It's not inappropriate at all. Certainly I wouldn't be lying down with 13-year-old girls or even 9 or 10-year-old girls. That's what the sofa is for. Because it's just giving them an unhealthy attitude, or could give them a perception. It all depends on the safety, and every relationship is different. But it sounds like she has decided how she's gonna paint you into a corner, and she's doing a good job of it, and I'm sorry that that's the case for you. Ah, yes, you say, "She's trying to frame me so she can take everything." Well, that's what they're good at. Hopefully, I you have a fabulous attorney who understands these things. You caught her and still no accountability. That's the sad thing, Steve. Never expect responsibility or accountability for a hijackal. They're not going to do it. They act in their own interest. They act in their own interest in the moment. They have to win in every moment. And you've probably heard me say on other broadcasts that you're discussing something with the hijackal, they have to win in that moment. So if they say black is white in that moment to win, that's what they'll do. An hour later, you're having another conversation and they say black is red. And you say, but you said black is white 20 minutes ago. And they don't bat an eyelash. They say, you don't listen very well, do you? Right? You can't expect them to take responsibility or accountability. And we can only hope that there will be some of that demanded when they are taken to court. And it's very tricky, very tricky. Another ugly thing about it is that hijackals hire hijackal attorneys. So there's two hijackals there and one of you. It's really difficult. So the sad fact is that hijackals do not specialize in accountability or taking responsibility for what they've done. They will always weasel out of it, project it back on you, and do some blame shifting. That's their MO. That's how they roll. People pleasing is a behavioral pattern of children of hijackals, John says. Well, not necessarily, actually. They not all children of hijackals turn into hijackals or codependents. There are some that weather it better than others. They don't become codependent. So we have to be careful of generalizations of that nature. Steve said, and my daughters are figuring out that their mommy is being nasty and it's not coming from me. Her actions are catching up with her. Well, hopefully they will, and that you will be kind to say, "Oh, is that what you think?" to your daughters, and say, "Ah, don't push the envelope in either direction. Just allow them to express." But I know it feels good to know that they recognize that things are not right, right? So very important. So I hope that as this catches up with her, that there's a reckoning that works in your favor. Sky says, I was pre-groomed for the hijackal. They should thank my parents immensely. Yep. Yeah, all the things that I've been talking about, hijackal parents will definitely pre-groom you and get you ready. If you had hijackal parents, it's almost certain that your first long-term relationship or marriage is going to be to a hijackal. You just don't know enough not to. It's so uncomfortably comfortable or comfortably uncomfortable, and so that just falls into place. So don't beat yourself up if that happened. Just recognize it, pick yourself up, and get yourself out of there. And I shouldn't even say that, because sometimes you can't get out. Sometimes you have to have a long-term exit plan. Every situation is different, but get yourself out of the mindset that says this is okay. That's what I mean about get yourself out of there, not necessarily walk out tonight, but you have to get some distance, get some perspective that just as Sky was saying, if you have been pre-groomed and then you get thinking about the things I've talked about tonight, and then you realize, whoa, I can see those patterns now, then you have reasons to heal. And you need to heal first so that you can recover. So this is a lot of the path that you have to take. Once you realize what's happening, then you need to heal, and then you need to recover. And you probably need help to do that because it's deep stuff. It's deeply in you. It's when you had hijackal parents. Steve said, I learned her behavior is frightening once you figure things out. Yeah, it is. And it's flabbergasting, or as they say in Britain, it's gobsmacking. Like, really? Who does this? I have a product, there's lots of products in my store on forrelationshiphelp.com. And one of them is called Seeing the Cycles. And those are hallmarks of hijackals, and there's worksheets and everything. It's a course. And one of those is incredulity. That when you hear a hijackal say or do something and your inner sense goes, who does that? Who thinks that way? Notice that part and work on that, because what the tendency is you've been raised by hijackals or become a people pleaser, you think, oh, I must have got it wrong. No, you were right. Who does that? So stick with that for sure. All right. Oh, you're welcome, Steve. John says, be careful of the people-pleasing hijackal. Yeah, the people-pleasing hijackal is a complete myth. That's the show they put on. You've all heard me say that hijackals paint a public picture of perfection while at home providing a private place of pain. So they will look like people-pleasing folks out in the world, and they'll be anything but that at home. You can guarantee that. Sky says, I'm definitely an overgiver to my own detriment. Isn't it good to know so that you can reel that in and pull it back? It's really good to be on to that. Yes, John, hijackals are never satisfied. They'll lead and scheme to get everything from a kind person. They will. They absolutely will. They are energy vampires. You're right, Sky. Love should never hurt. Absolutely. John asked me, was I a people pleaser? No, John, I never was. That's why I know that children of hijackals do not always turn into people pleasers. Nope, I never was one. Walker Hound Gal, my hijackal came in to talk over Dr. Shaler to literally ask me to go back to being the old me who did not get educated about dysfunction. Yeah, that's what they'll do. I was talking to a client the other day. He was in his car, and his hijackal wife came to the window and pounded on his car window 4 times during this session because she just wasn't having it that he was having time without her, even though she didn't know that he was talking to me. But she was not going to allow him to have time alone. And so it's not a surprise that that happened to you. Um, Share Bear says, now since leaving my ex and living on my own, sometimes I still catch myself feeling guilty doing things for myself, even just to buy food that I like or even getting my truck fixed. That's pretty common, Share Bear, because you've been had to be hyper vigilant for criticism when you've been with a hijackal, and you internalize it, and your inner critic works way overtime because you're thinking, what are all the things I need to think about before I get blamed for something? And so you've internalized that, but you're obviously catching yourself, and now you're doing things for yourself. So yay. That's great. It's a long journey, and I'm so glad to hear that that's happening for you. Sky says, "Healthy love is a phantom to me. I have no idea what it is or how it looks. It was never modeled." Well, fortunately, I did an episode on it just a few weeks ago, so you can go and find the episode called "What Healthy Love Is," and, you can hear my definitions and things over there. Shares that this is the first live chat I've caught. I'm so glad that you're here. I hope you'll be able to come and join us other Monday evenings at 7 o'clock Pacific time. Be sure to subscribe. If you're on YouTube, subscribe and hit the notification button. If you're on Facebook, be sure to like the page, and because then you will get a notice about what the topics are each Monday evening, somewhere between noon and 4 o'clock, so you can decide to come along. Isabel, hello. How to respond to somebody basically telling you you're taking too long, get over after hijackal abuse. Mm, that's so sad. There is no timeline. Grief has no timeline. Remember when you're getting over a hijackal, it's a grieving process. You're grieving the fact that the person that you fell in love with doesn't exist. And you're grieving the fact that the person you fell in love with who doesn't exist is still somebody that you wanted and now you can't have them. And there's a part of you that says, I shouldn't want them, but the more primitive part of you does because you're caught in a trauma bond often. So tell people that you're taking whatever time it takes and that it's helpful, that if people feel that they are fatigued from supporting you, that you're glad that they gave you notice and that you will move on from sharing that with them further. There is just no time frame for healing. Now, of course, if we get really depressed and we're not moving in our healing journey, we have to notice that. But as long as we're taking baby steps and it's always positive, or even if we're doing a bit of a cha-cha, 2 steps forward and 1 step back, or as a samba, I don't know which it is, we're still moving forward more. So if people are impatient with you, it just means that they're getting what I call compassion fatigue. And, just share with them, "Well, this is my path. This is my journey. Thank you for walking with me here. I'll take it from here on." Just don't make them wrong for it. Just tell them that, you are you and it takes you the time that it does and you're actively involved in the healing process, which I hope you are, and just release them. They don't understand. They don't have things to give you. They've given what they have, I guess, or they wouldn't be bringing it up. Annie says, Parental alienation is something I only recently learned about. Wish I'd known 30 years ago." Yeah, it's something that has a lot of controversy around it, but I think the basic concept is absolutely true. One parent tries to abscond with the affections of the children and make the other parent wrong or lesser. And it happens. It happens subtly and it happens very overtly. And it's something that we have to be careful about, excuse me, when we are observing hijackal relationships. Walker Hound Gal says, "Oh my gosh, thank you for mentioning the hijackals will not assist us when we're sick and need medical attention. I've been there many, many times. No more. Good for you." I was just thinking as I read that, I had a client who they were part of a very fundamentalist organization. And she wrote to me, in fact, there's so much so that she wanted to use money that she'd inherited from her mother to have sessions with me to help her with her business, which I used to do. And so they drove a long way, like 500 miles, to take me to lunch so that he could approve of me. And then she wrote me a year or 2 later, and she was in abject pain from a kidney stone, and his words to her were, "Well, you're a strong woman. You can manage. I'm not taking you to the hospital." It was just so unkind. It was just so horrible. I have so many examples of that, so oh, thank you, Gwen. Yes, I do have new glasses. I'm glad you like them. I'm happy with them too. It was time to be able to see again, so I thought I might as well have new frames too. Hello, Ursel. Walker Hunger. I need to re-listen to this podcast a few times. It's invaluable. Good. Love that Masters of the Plausible Lie. Yeah, it's terrible, but it says it all, doesn't it? John asks, does it seem like in our communities that there's a war going on between hijackals and kind people? I believe counselors enable the hijackals. Counselors came up with new excuses for the hijackal. Yeah, you bring up a really good point, John. And I say this to my clients all the time. The hijackal partner will say, well, we should go to counseling, or my client will say to their hijackal before working with me, that the hijackal should go and get therapy. And I say, whoa, on both those cases, because a hijackal will go for therapy, but their only intent is to manipulate the therapist into agreeing with them. So they're not going to tell the truth. They are not going to be equal. They are not going to ever allow themselves to get anything but sympathy and affirmation and validation for how badly treated they are. So there is certainly a war, and a counselor only sees the person that they see. And if they actually believe their client after a while, we all believe our clients in the beginning, but after you get to know them for a while, and your job is really to ask them to ask themselves really important questions. And if that doesn't happen, then counselors can definitely aid and abet hijackals, for sure. Good point, John. Sky says, so then the hijackal parents never once contemplated what was to become of my future. Oh, you're only there to make them look good. Remember that. Not preparing us for life. Well, preparing you to do what they wanted you to do. How short-sighted and selfish. Oh, yeah, definitely 100% selfish. Definitely eating their young. Hijackal parents are what I call devouring parents. So there you go. You got it in one. You said they're eating their young. Well, they are. They're there to devour you, to take over your life with no thought for your sense of yourself or a sense of your well-being or wanting to contribute to it. That's the problem. So, yes, they don't make good parents. In my opinion, hijackals have children for 3 reasons. They want someone to agree with them, someone to do their bidding, and someone to make them look good. They're highly competitive with their children, and that's terrible. That's destructive. And then that's why things go sideways when a hijackal one person in a couple is a hijackal, and then they decide to have a baby. The hijackal, particularly if it's the man, he doesn't want to have any competition for his wife's affection or time or energy. And the baby, for a little while, while she's pregnant, he'll take her out in public and say, look how potent I am. Look what I did. Isn't this wonderful? And everybody, oh, isn't that wonderful? You're going to have a baby. Then they have a baby and they carry the baby, and they always want to put it on themselves so people will come and talk about the baby. But when the baby starts taking away the partner's time, when the wife does not have the time to give or is too exhausted or whatever, competition is on right from that moment. And it's really sad. Uh, okay. John says, I will validate with you. They never want to be accountable. That's true. And he says, my daughter must always be one up on me. Oddly funny now that I understand the hijackal phenomenon. That's the way they have to be. They always have to be one up. They always have to be winning. Gwen says, when my spouse asks me to do something after I've done it, he says, thank you, as if I did it for him. I know this doesn't sound bad, but that's part of the subtle manipulation. I get that. Yes, all of these things can be very subtle. Some of them are very blatant, but many of them are very subtle. Number 16 speaks to you. Walker, hound, gal. Let's see what number 16 is. Number 16, when you're stressed, anxious, and burned out, so you give in more easily. Yes. And you're welcome. Anaphylaxis. Hi. Thank you. Personal weather report. Yes, everybody have a look at that. It can change your communication with everybody. Isabel says, thank you. This was a friend. That's what I thought. Appreciate it. Decide not to talk about it anymore. Yes, I think that's the best thing. I'm glad you're doing better. That's good. John asks, is people pleasing a defense mechanism so the victim can avoid being abused? Um, Actually, that's what we call fawning. Fawning is a part of people pleasing, very, very related. So, yes, that's one of the ways that we avoid being abused. You're right. You are welcome, Share Bear. And yes, you're absolutely right, Alice. Hello, I haven't seen you here before. Self care is not selfish. So very many important pieces to this puzzle, and I'm so glad that you were here. I hope that you've subscribed and hit notification buttons and everything, so you'll remember to come on Mondays. It's nice and 7 p.m. here for me in San Diego in Pacific time, but I certainly appreciate the fact that some people get up at 5 a.m. to be with us too. If I can help you in any way, you know to go to beaclient.com. You will find me there. Then, if you'd like to be part of my emerging empowered community where we talk about these things, and as a member, you get 2 group Ask Me Anything calls a month. So we all get together and people ask me questions. You can go to joinintoday.com. Joinintoday.com will take you to become a member of my emerging empowered community. We all want to be emerging empowered, I hope. I hope that that sounds good to you and that you will join me over there, joinintoday.com. So I will say to you directly until we talk again, take very good self care, and you're precious, you matter, and I hope you will see that clearly every day. Talk soon.